Newcastle United beat Arsenal 1-0 in St James's Park on Saturday, and suddenly the season looks a little bit rosier. Eddie Howe made some big tactical tweaks, and I'm going to explain why I think one of them could be the way forward for Newcastle. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining me on this latest video. Thanks also so much to all of the people who watched my Hull City mini documentary video, report from the MKM Stadium from Saturday's game, the second episode of Exploring Football. 1,000 views, so many more subscribers as well. I appreciate most of them are probably Hull fans, but I'm really pleased with so many people who've got involved. And please do continue to like, share and subscribe to the channel and the videos, because it really does help grow it, and there's going to be so much more interesting stuff coming from so many different clubs over the course of the next few months, and I'm really excited about it. There also is, I keep promising it, a podcast coming on this channel called Exploring Football with me and a friend of mine, where we'll be diving into big stories and also giving you a little bit of analysis as well on football in the UK and abroad. Let's get into the video without further ado though, and I think we really need to talk about Newcastle United's right hand side in this video, because that was, for me, the key part of the game. Yes, the left-hand side is getting a lot of plaudits with Joe Willock and Joe Linton linking up really well alongside Lewis Hall, who was man of the match and has been player of the month for October as well, so he's on really good form. But I do want to talk about the right-hand side, because I think it unlocks something in Newcastle that maybe is at least until January, when they can solve the right midfield issue and get a bona fide right winger in there who can invert like Eddie Howe really wants. Anthony Gordon playing on that side could really benefit Newcastle in the short term. There's a little bit of trepidation before the game, obviously, with Tonali coming out after such a positive performance. Dan Burn obviously replacing Lloyd Kelly as well after such a positive performance in midweek against Chelsea. But you could see Eddie Howe's thinking, because he was really wanting to get Longstaff onto the pitch to keep that midfield tight against Arsenal's options, and also sort of funnel them through the middle, because they're showing that they struggle to operate without Martin Odegaard in there, and also Joe Willock and Joe Linton on that left-hand side. As I said earlier, their link-up was the hallmark of 22-23 when Newcastle finished fourth, and I don't think it's a real shock that Newcastle started to play a little bit better and a little bit more like that with those two in the team. So that's the reason Newcastle and Eddie Howe lined up the way that they did in this game, I think. But on the right-hand side, obviously, Tino Livramento behind Anthony Gordon, with Joe Linton obviously playing on that left-hand side. I've said it quite a few times, and I've wondered about whether Anthony Gordon playing on the right-hand side is the way forward. I've probably changed my tune a little bit, because at the start of the season, you think that, and I think Eddie Howe thought this as well, you want your best players in their best positions, in terms of Gordon playing on that left-hand side. That's why he was so effective last season. That's why he had such a great season last year. But I think the context around that season's maybe changed how Gordon's viewed, because he only came to Newcastle. One of the reasons he was selected by Dan Ashworth, Eddie Howe, and the recruitment team in that January, and you can see it on the Amazon documentary, is because he is very, very versatile. He can play across that front four, and lots of people that I've spoken to who've watched him and saw him and helped him grow up at Everton said the same thing. You know, he's really versatile. He can play down the middle, he can play either side, he can play him behind. So I really do think that Newcastle could use that to their advantage this season, especially when there's so much quality and so much depth in the left-hand side with Harvey Barnes and obviously Joe Linton as well. And I've made my feelings clear on Joe Linton's midfield situation. So maybe it's better that Gordon does, for at least the short term, move out to the right. And actually, I think it really worked, because he stretched Arsenal's back line. He pulled them out of their positions a little bit. He made the pitch big. He hugged the touchline. You can see that from the cross, which is absolutely sublime for Isak's goal in the first half. He's basically on the touchline when that happens. And that really suits Tino Livramento as well, because on that right-hand side with inverted wingers, that's what is better for Trippier, because when Kieran Trippier plays that side, he's the one who offers the width. He's the one who stretches the pitch, gets the ball in. Whereas if Gordon's doing that, it allows Livramento, who's a better dribbler, better on the ball and driving forward, to maybe underlap and go on the inside, play a bit narrower and make use of that space. in a sort of way that many fullbacks do in the sort of modern age, where they drift into midfield. And you can see Bruno running into that when he plays on that 8 side. You can see what Sean Longstaff did when he scored that goal against PSG last season. So that space is often occupied by the winger for Newcastle, but maybe it could be occupied by the midfielder and the fullback, with Gordon stretching the play a little bit more, because he is no less effective running at defenders when he's going on the outside as he is on the inside. He's really, really good at both things. I think, for me, as I've said before, I think Newcastle's strength with the left-hand side and the depth that they've got on that left-hand side means they can afford to put Gordon on that right-hand side, because Gordon is a better right winger than either Almiron or Murphy, in my opinion, and certainly Barnes in there as well. I think you can have the battle between Joelinton and Barnes on the left-hand side, because the inversion there and the link up with Willock, who's the one who makes that the overlapping runs, and that left-hand side, and then you've got Howe there as well making an overload on that side. That sorts itself regardless of who's on that side. Whereas the right-hand side, I think, comes alive when Gordon is, because he's the one who stretches, and you've got the different attacking sides on either wing then. You've got an overlapper on the left-hand side, you've got an underlapper on the right-hand side, and it gives that variety, but crucially, it suits Tino Livramento. And it isn't necessarily a long-term solution. Maybe it is, I don't know. It's certainly effective enough, and it was really effective enough against one of the top sides in the country on Saturday to make the difference in that game. I think it can be a way forward until January, until there's an opportunity at least to solve that right-hand side issue with an inverted player. But that wouldn't suit Tino Livramento. If Newcastle are going to move forward with Tino Livramento, they need to play to his strengths as well. He isn't the type of fullback who goes on the outside and crosses the ball. He dribbles with the ball, and he can make more effective impacts on the game from an inverted position, and I think he's really very modern in that sense, and it gives Newcastle that ability, that tactical flexibility, and I think that's really, really positive. But other than that, Newcastle were very good all over the pitch. It was a return to the sort of hard work, the energy, the intensity, the high press, but also that defensive solidity that we saw midweek against Chelsea as well. Once they took the lead, they said to Arsenal, break us down, and Arsenal simply couldn't do that, because they, similarly to Newcastle last season, where their system really relied on certain players, Joelinton not being there really impacted the intensity and the power. It's the same for Martin Odegaard and Arsenal. I think without him, they are much more toothless. And, credit to Lewis Hall. I think he deserves huge credit for keeping Bukayo Saka quiet. Credit to Dan Burn as well for coming back into the team when people maybe didn't think he deserved to because of Lloyd Kelly's performance, but he really suited playing against Havertz, because there wasn't much running in behind. It's not Nicholas Jackson. I think lots of people criticised his performance against Chelsea, and lots of people criticised Dan Burn for last season when he was run at by pacey players in behind him when he was playing at left back. But those things are not playing to his strengths, whereas playing against a player like Havertz, who will come short and play in front of Burn, allows Burn to defend what's in behind him, and I think that really suits him. So it was not surprising to me to see him play so well. Really, really positive to see both Hall and Livramento defensively stepping up, because that's been the biggest issue, particularly with Hall over the last year, 14 months or so that he's been at the club, is the issue with his defensive abilities. He looked really good alongside Willock and Joelinton, and obviously that link-up is always going to be really, really effective. Going forward, does Sandro Tonali come back in and try and do that central role instead of Sean Longstaff? It would be interesting to see. Obviously, there's a really tough game against Nottingham Forest on Sunday to contend with their third in the league. I made the point in the True Faith podcast yesterday that Newcastle do need to put a good performance in away from home to really show that they have turned a corner, because at home they're really, really effective in many different ways. They're really, really good at home. Obviously, the Brighton defeat is a blow, but that's the only defeat of the Man City at home in 2024. So they're really good at St James's Park. They need to prove that they're really good away from home. But going forward, I think Anthony Gordon playing on that right, stretching the play, hugging the touchline, opening up that space in between for Tino Livramento to run into on the underlap, for the midfield to bomb into that space as well. It could create various different situations, as it did on Saturday. Really good performance from Newcastle United. It's looking up. They're currently 10th in the league, but only 3 points behind Arsenal. Now, it's so tight in the top half of the Premier League at the moment. But yeah, really, really good performance. Thanks so much for joining me on this video. Like, share and subscribe, and please do continue to get involved with Exploring Football. The podcast is coming soon, and Also, another video next week. Also, a piece on Hull City on my Substack is coming out this afternoon as you're watching this, so please do check that out as well. I'll link it on Twitter and Blue Sky and all that sort of thing. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time. Cheers.